Next topic we have is fraud in the fraud risk model, sometimes also called the fraud triangle. There are two types of fraud broadly. One is the fraud involving fraudulent financial reporting, and the second type of fraud is the misappropriation of assets. Now, what's the difference? When you say the financial reporting fraud or the fraudulent financial reporting, this is the fraud committed by the management. When they play with the numbers, they artificially inflate revenues, understate expenses, overstate assets, understate liabilities. This is the fraud committed by the management. And this is the fraud that is a cognizable offense. This is the fraud that external auditors are expected to discover. And if such a fraud is discovered, then it would result in some sort of regulatory action against the company and its management. Right? Fraudulent financial reporting, also called the management fraud. Then we have the second type of fraud called misappropriation of assets. A company may have lots of assets in inventory, computers, furniture items, vehicles, so on and so forth. So misappropriation of assets, this is the fraud committed by employees through theft, through embezzlement, defalcation. You take company's laptop and you sell it in the market. That's defalcation. Embezzlement means you have been given petty cash for running day-to-day expenses, but you start meeting your own personal expenses. Theft is outright stealing company's property. So these are the frauds we call the misappropriation of assets. Now, how can we prevent misappropriation of assets, which you call the employees fraud? This can be prevented by establishing a strong system of internal control. Senior management directs the institution of system of internal control. Then the management, the mid-level management, it is expected to create a control system, a system of internal control. You would have studied in your section E CMA part 1 to mitigate, to reduce the exposure of fraud by instituting a strong system of check and balance. We'll discuss this in detail, so how we can prevent this. Our main topic today is the fraud triangle. Fraud triangle has three components: opportunity, motivation, and rationalization. Let me briefly discuss these three with you. Opportunity means if your system of internal control is weak, people will commit fraud. Opportunity is the weakness in internal control system, lack of supervision. There are controls, but they are not enforced. Motivation means you have some reasons to commit fraud. You have some need for committing fraud. And rationalization is the justification for committing the fraud. Opportunity means system of internal control is weak, no one checks, you commit the fraud. Motivation is the need or some reason for committing the fraud, and rationalization is the justification. When you commit a fraud, you will have some justification. So these are the three components of this triangle. We'll discuss this in detail in much more in depth. So there are three characteristics of fraud: opportunity, rationalization, pressure, or sometimes called motivation. Even if there is no opportunity, if there is no justification by employees, if there is no pressure, you must not believe, you must not be deceived that there is no fraud. Even if none of these characteristics are present, still it is possible that there might have been a fraud. Even no characteristics are observed, the risk of fraud cannot be completely excluded. In the absence, still fraud may exist, right? Okay. Instead of triangle, many practitioners, they like to view the fraud model as a trio of overlapping circles. Let me explain the fraud triangle through these circles. That will make much more sense. These are the three characteristics of fraud: incentive or pressure, attitude or rationalism, and opportunity. Let us discuss these one by one. Opportunity means your system of internal control is weak. You believe nobody really checks. Let's commit a fraud. Opportunity is the weakness in internal control. Attitude or rationalism is the justification. Everyone is doing it. So if I'm stealing, so what's the big deal? Opportunity is a weakness in system of internal control. Rationalism is your justification for committing fraud. And if you have need also, incentive or pressure, I need to to hit my monthly targets, or I need money to pay my debts. These are the three characteristics of fraud. Now, if opportunity is present alone, the possibility of occurrence of fraud is low. If there is just rationalism, low. If there is just incentive and pressure, low. But when there is opportunity and rationalism, the probability of occurrence of fraud is medium. When there is incentive and pressure and rationalism together, medium. When incentive and pressure and opportunity, medium. But when these three characteristics exist simultaneously, company's system of internal control is weak. I have justification for committing fraud because I'm being underpaid. I'm qualified professional, but my salary is very low, and I need money to pay my debt. When these three characteristics are present simultaneously, in that case, the probability of occurrence of fraud is the highest. Right? This is an important concept you need to make sure. Now let us discuss these one by one. What do we mean by opportunity? Opportunity means you are in control. You are able to commit a fraud and you are able to hide it. Like, I am the one who holds cash. I have access to cash, and I am the one who reconciles bank statement. So when I have the cash with me and I am the one who reconciles bank statement, then definitely I can commit a fraud and I can conceal it because I am at the both sides of the wicket. I have the cash and I have the reconciliation in my hand. So this would happen. Opportunity is the ability of a person to commit a fraud and hide it because there is a system, there is a weakness in the system of internal control. What weakness? Maybe the system of internal control is inadequate. Maybe there is no oversight, no one checks my work, or there is a very strong system of internal control, but it is not being enforced properly. Right? So we just discussed there are three characteristics of fraud: opportunity, rationalism, and motivation. Out of these, only this is the factor, opportunity is the only characteristic that can be controlled through instituting a strong system of internal control. Through segregation of duties, absolutely. Segregating duties. Someone else keeps cash, someone else deposits in the bank, someone else maintains cash book, and totally another person reconciles bank. That's what you call segregation of duties. So this is the only characteristic which we can control by instituting a strong system of internal control in our company, so that not a single person can commit a fraud and hide it. The second characteristic is rationalization, justification. Everyone will have a justification when you commit fraud. So rationalization is ability to justify your action because you have your own personal code of ethics. So you believe you are being underpaid, you are being made to work under pressure, you have been working for the last 20 years, you are the senior executive, whatever justification you have. When you commit a fraud and you have a justification to commit a fraud, this is called rationalization. Right? So integrity vary from person to person. I have my own sense of integrity, you may have your own XYZ. So that's why every person will have his or her own way of justifying the commission of fraud. These are some justifications given by people when they commit fraud. I committed fraud because I was underpaid or I was overworked. In my company, everyone was doing it, so I did it also. My sales manager is a thief. My general manager is stealing money. So if I'm stealing, what's new? Everyone else is doing it. This is justification. I am at a very high position in the company. I have the high rank. So what if I spend 3,000 riyals on food item at some good restaurant? So what? Or maybe you have low self-esteem, low morale, and you just wanted to raise your level of esteem by stealing. Or maybe you just want to take revenge. Your immediate supervisor is very stiff guy, and now you want to take revenge. You stolen the money and had fun with it. So revenge, rank, you believe it is everyone is doing, I will do it. Or maybe you think that I'm just taking the company's cash from petty cash for my personal use. I'm taking it as a loan, and when I receive my salary, I will pay it back. Or your company is a huge, super huge company, and if I steal $1,000, so what's the big deal? Nobody will get hurt. So these are some justifications given by those who commit fraud. Nonetheless, whether you think it's justified or you don't think, fraud is fraud. Haram is haram. You cannot justify a wrong action by giving some justification based upon your personal code of ethics, right? So, but for us management accountants, rationalization is likely to be the most difficult characteristics to assess, to appraise. Why? Because integrity vary from person to person. Everyone will have his or her own personal code of ethics. That's why this is something very difficult for us to evaluate or to assess or appraise. Now we have the third component of fraud triangle called pressure motivation. This is basically the reason to commit fraud. Why do we commit fraud? There has to be some reason. Maybe I want promotion, maybe I will get some admiration, I will earn respect, or maybe I will be able to continue my employment if I commit fraud. So pressure could be the reason or need for committing a fraud. So other than these rewards, admiration, respect, maybe you are under pressure because you have taken loan from the bank and you have to meet the loan agreements covenants called the debt covenants. When you take loan from the bank, bankers impose certain conditions and you have to meet those conditions. Or when you issue bonds, there are certain conditions that you need to meet, called debt covenants. Maybe you have a budget to meet, or maybe you have been given another financial goal or target. This could be the reason why you commit fraud. Sometimes those companies that are listed on New York Stock Exchange, many New York Stock Exchange analysts, they set some earning targets for the companies. They do almost every quarter. Earning targets for IBM, earning targets for Apple, Google, so on and so forth. Sometimes these earning targets set by the Wall Street analysts, they become a target for employees, so for the management. So management will do whatever in their capacity to meet or exceed those earning targets set by Wall Street analysts. So this could become a reason or a need for committing fraud, especially financial statement fraud. Now, for us, we need to know some warning signs, some risk factors that might indicate some potential fraud. Red flags. This is studied in CIA. Red flags are warning signs indicating that there is a possibility of fraud. Red flag is not an assurance that there is a fraud, but it's an indication that there is a possibility that fraud might exist. So let us see both types of frauds one by one. First, the misappropriation of assets. What are the red flags in case of employees fraud, misappropriation of assets, and what are the red flags or the warning signs in case of fraudulent financial reporting? It's quite an exhaustive list, and if you find any of these red flags difficult, let me know. I will explain all. Let us first discuss what are the red flags in case of employees fraud or misappropriation of assets. Some documents are missing. Delivery reports are not there. Missing documents is a red flag. Why? Large amounts of cash on hand. Why do we need to hold large? Cash must be deposited on the same day. Large amounts of cash, if are being held without the need, could be stolen. Maybe your company is engaged in trading of items which are highly valued, like gold, like jewelry, diamonds, small sized inventories that you can simply slip into your pockets, right? Especially FMCG, many departmental stores, when every employee comes in the morning and leaves at night, they are thoroughly searched that they don't carry anything in their pockets, right? This is the way. Then unexplained budget variances. Your sale variance, your production variance, labor variances, they are unexplained. Whenever there is a variance, adverse or favorable, it has to be justified, it has to be explained. So if there are variances and they are unexplained, it's a red flag, it's a warning sign. An account receivables have been written off without proper authorization. This is something I observed myself when I was working in Saudi Arabia. Large account receivables were written off by owner's son without justification, and it created a lot of trouble. Unusual write-offs of receivable. This is an indication that something is cooking. You sell to your friend in the market and then you write your friend's accounts off as uncollectible, and you and your friend enjoy with the money. It shouldn't have happened. Unusual write-off is not permitted. Write-off must be authorized by someone senior in the organization who is not involved in sales department. Failure of certain employees to take vacations. In Saudi Arabia, normally companies give annual vacation, paid vacation, and if you find your sales manager not going for vacation for the continuous 6 years, there is something wrong. And there was something wrong, by the way. So failures of certain employees to take vacations mean they are trying to hide something. They have committed a fraud and they are just sitting on the fraud. Failure to follow up on past due receivables. Some receivables are due and you're not collecting the money. Why? Maybe it's a fake sale. Maybe you sold the goods to your friend in the market and now you just don't want to collect because the money won't be collected, right? Shortages in deliveries and delivered or received goods. Shortages is an indication something is wrong. Poor supervision. The work of subordinates is not being supervised. Products or services purchased in excess of demand or in excess of need, clearly to earn commission. Employees who are on our payroll, but they never come for benefits, they never come for medical facilities, they never come up. Maybe they are fake employees. They are on the payroll, but they do not exist in reality. Petty cash expenses, but not documented. $2,000 real spent, but there is no supporting fatura. There is no invoice where the money was spent. Right? Any expense, every expense must be supported by documents. If they are not, it means there is something wrong. So these red flags, basically, they are indication of potential fraud, but it's not that it's surely a fraud, but it's just an indication. It's a question mark that there could be something wrong that needs to be investigated. Then some addresses and telephone numbers of your suppliers and customers, but they match the numbers of your employees. Maybe some of your employees are also registered as companies, suppliers or customers and maybe just taking some benefit out of it. Or maybe the complaints by customers. So these are some red flags or the warning signs in case of misappropriation of assets. Fraudulent financial reporting, management's fraud. What are the red flags in case of manipulated financial statements? The first red flag, first and foremost, the results are either too good to make your shareholders happy or too bad to deceive the regulatory authorities or the tax authorities. Too good to be true, too bad to be true. This is the first red flag that needs investigation. Or maybe there is a threat of bankruptcy and you are struggling to protect your company. Or there is a threat of foreclosure under the law, or maybe there is a threat of hostile takeover. These three are desperate conditions where you are just trying to survive. Here, because just you want to survive, you might commit some fraud. So these are the three very typical situations where there could be fraudulent financial reporting: bankruptcy, foreclosure, or hostile takeover. Then the third one is interesting. High turnover of your senior management. Your senior management, CFO is coming, old is going, then the new one is going, another new one is coming. Your consuls are changing, your board members are changing. Something is cooking, something is wrong. That's why there is a lot of turnover in the senior management and in the legal counsel. This means something is wrong. This one is I can relate to this. Non-financial managers, they participate in selecting accounting principles or determining estimates. Your sale manager, he's the one who decides what should be the percentage for the allowance for uncollectible accounts. Or he's the one who tells you what should be the policy for revenue recognition. He's not a finance guy. When non-financial managers, they intervene in the job of accounting department, that means there is something wrong they want to do. This one is also an important one. Strained relationship with the auditor. Auditor has some issues. Maybe your company has a history of security loss, frauds. Once a thief is always a thief. Market is in decline, so you are just struggling to survive. Your cash flows are poor, so you want to just play with the numbers to make your things look good. Significant related party transaction. Let's say there are three companies, company A, B and C, and they are related. A holds 60% shares in B, B holds 40% shares in A, and A also holds 10% shares in C. So they might engage in such transactions that might manipulate financial statements. That's why there are specific requirements for related party transactions. So significant related party transactions not in the ordinary course of business, amounts either too low or too high, that would indicate there is something wrong. Then highly complex transactions, leasing or pension expenses, pension liabilities, here you can play. Transactions in tax havens like Panama, Cayman Islands, Cyprus, etc. These are tax havens where mostly companies get their head office registered for the purpose of playing with tax. Unrealistic sale or profitability incentives. Sale managers offered 50% of sales as 50% of the sales revenue as his commission. This is too high to be the incentive or for the sales manager. Unusually rapid growth. When the industry is in decline, but your company is showing unusually high growth, how come? Or maybe there is a pressure to meet the analyst earning expectation. That's what we discussed in the previous slide. Wall Street analysts, they normally set earning targets or earning expectations for different blue chip companies, and these earning targets sometimes become the benchmarks for the managers to manipulate their financial statements. So these were some red flags related to employees fraud called the misappropriation of assets and the management fraud called the fraudulent financial reporting. Now let us see what are the investigative resources and techniques we have. Remember, we are just management accountants, but we need to be familiar with some techniques we use in identifying fraud, investigating fraud, and then documenting the evidence. So there are 5 subcomponents in this topic. We'll discuss some information regarding documents, how we can take help from public search information, commercial online services, electronic evidence, and finally how we can interview those who are suspected of fraud. So when we have documents being reviewed, those documents that you find in the trash bin, dumpster, or the paper shredder, they must be investigated, because when the management who has committed a fraud, they are trying to destroy the evidence. Here you need to look for trash bins, dumpster, and paper shredder. I hope you will remember Enron 2002, when the fraud was committed, the audit firm that was involved in this fraud, Arthur Andersen audit firm destroyed its audit documents so as not to be implicated in the case. So this is clearly the case in point. Shredder, trash bin, dumpster, that's where you will find the evidence to be hidden or to be stashed away. Altered documents, some signatures have been modified, altered writing. So in this case, maybe you need to hire some expert to see whether the signatures are genuine or they have been signed by someone else. Forged copies, photocopies can be forged. Maybe you get just a copy of blank check, then on that check you write some amounts and signatures, and then you get a copy again, and then you can just file it away as with the payment voucher. This is done many times. Check is copied, then on that copy you write the payee's name, the amount, the signature date, and all that, and then you take another copy and you just file it away, and this is done just to show that the payment has been made. In fact, no payment was made. So forged photocopies, documents that are torn, smudged, faded, or even burnt. Even smudged, torn documents can be examined for authenticity, whether they are genuine or they have been just faked. Then we have some public search information from where we can get some evidence for our investigation, whether it's a management fraud or the employees fraud. We can get the record from the government, civil or criminal actions. Bankruptcy courts will have the information and evidence for bankruptcy related cases, marriage license and divorces, property records. Your directors claim they don't have any property, but the government archives could be searched for the director that he have multiple properties in different locations in the country. Litigation history of your senior management. Social media also. Your CFO complains to be underpaid, but during the time when he was on vacation, he was traveling on a cruise liner with his family. Social media, and he shared this on Facebook or Twitter. So how can he have enjoyed such a luxurious trip when he was saying that he was underpaid. Social media could be used as an evidence. Medical records, banking records, trust records, telephone records, to whom you talked at the point when the fraud was committed, passenger list. You claim that you were on the plane, or maybe you were on train when the fraud was committed, so we can get it verified by getting the passenger list, and so on and so forth. Stock ownerships and so on. So these are the public search information where you can get the relevant evidence while conducting a fraud investigation. You can also get commercial online services. These commercial online services, they will provide you legal, financial, personal, and just a minute, let me highlight the relevant part. Commercial online services. Numerous commercial online services, they will provide you information about legal, financial, personal, and business activities for a fee. You can use this as an evidence against in a fraud investigation. Electronic evidence. Now, most of the documents are digital in PDF version. So it is apparently, to us, it appears that we can open a PDF editor, we can just edit the PDF document, and then we can just file it away digitally in our system. We have some ways to identify who created the document, when was it created, PDF, because this is how the documents in the business are stored in our servers, and who has the ability to change it, and how and where it is maintained and stored. This could be used for investigation. So in this, since it's a high-tech area, so we may have to hire experts for it who will advise us when the document was created, who changed it, when changed it, and where was it maintained and stored. We can use it as for our investigative purpose. And finally, when we have to conduct some fraud investigations, we are management accountants. We won't be conducting such an investigations ourselves, but we may be involved in this process. So if you are conducting an interview, so for you determining whether the person is lying or not, it is difficult. But what you can see are some signs, some behaviors, some psychological behaviors of that individual that might indicate whether the person is lying or not. Like, here's the list. If the person who is being interviewed and he's suspected of fraud, he's shaking his head rather than giving some verbal responses, indication that he might be hiding something. Responding to the interviewer with a question. Interviewer asks him a question, and instead of responding, he in return asks a question. Rather than just giving his response, responding to the interviewer with a question. This is indication he's trying to hide something. Sweating, ठंडे पसीने जिसे हम बोलते हैं, sweating in the cold sweats is an indication you're trying to hide something. Unusually wide open eyes means you're trying, just like the picture what you see here. Denying an assertion while providing inconsistent non-verbal cues. Your body language will tell that you're saying something, but your body is acting in a different way. Looking down rather than at the interviewer. Not maintaining the eye contact means you are trying to hide something. Shifting and fidgeting, you are uneasy. You are hiding something, trying to not to disclose. So shifting and fidgeting is also a cue. It's also an indication that the person is lying. These are just an indication, just a sign, but doesn't mean the person is the culprit. And this one, last one, is interesting. Interviewer asks for some questions, but the suspect, he delays in giving the responses. Delaying responses to the question means he's thinking carefully before he answers the question. So that would mean that he's trying to just create an answer because he doesn't want to be implicated. So he's creating an answer so as not to be implicated. So that completes your fraud triangle. We'll do the questions in our next class, and then we will wind our chapter up inshallah on Monday.